This meeting to order. This is the City Council of the City of Escalon, regular meeting of November 4th, 2019. Would you please join me in the salute to our flag? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Merkin? Here. Councilmember Crumick? Here. Councilmember Lejeune?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Alves?
Here.
Mayor Swift?
Here. And let's see, looks like we will proceed directly to a presentation tonight. I do understand that we do not have a representative in the audience to accept this presentation at the time, but I will assume that shortly afterwards or sometime soon we'll be able to give this proclamation to them.
Absolutely.
And, but for everybody here and everybody out there in YouTube land, I'd like to read this briefly to bring this important issue to your awareness. Proclamation, November as Homeless Youth Awareness Month. Whereas, Women's, Children, Youth, and Family Services work to empower women, children, youth, and families to improve and change their lives with more than 40 years of experience providing services and shelter for runaway and homeless youth and victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking. And whereas runaway and homeless youth are young people who are deeply in need of resources and opportunities, but do not always have access to those resources. And whereas 1 in 10 young adults aged 18 to 25, and at least 1 in 30 adolescents aged 13 through 17 experience some form of homelessness, unaccompanied by a parent or guardian over the course of the year. And whereas in San Joaquin County alone, there is an estimated 100 youth who are homeless every night, coming from every life circumstances, and sharing experience of home environments that are unsafe and unhealthy. And whereas, working together, we can prevent situations that compel youth to run away by helping them to discover life-saving skills, awareness of what it means to run away, and why running away will not solve their problems, resources for building a safety net of trusted people and organizations, and communication and stress management skills. And whereas, to help prevent youth from running away, families and communities must understand the facts about runaway youth, help youth protect themselves, and assure youth of the opportunities and support available, and act as mentors and role models for youth, guiding them toward available resources and safe, healthy, productive choices. And whereas, the City of Escalon supports the efforts of Women's Center Youth and Family Services, who is working diligently to increase public awareness, advocate on behalf of youth to provide positive and safe alternatives to runaway and homeless youth and their families. Now, therefore, in recognition of the important work done by the Women's Center Youth and Family Services youth programs, services, shelters, and community partners, I, Mayor Robert Swift of Escalon, California, do hereby proclaim the month of November 2019 to be Homeless Youth Awareness Month, and encourage all citizens to dedicate themselves to joining Women's Center Youth and Family Services to end youth homelessness. I would imagine if you thought about it, you probably know somebody or a family or some youth in a situation some way, somehow, at one point in here that, yeah, they probably went through some like this. I know I do. And so this is a very important issue. Often we don't see them because we're at home at night, you know, so we're not going to see them on the streets. But imagine your kid or your grandkid in that kind of situation. It's something very serious that we need to all take our part in. Tammy, can I give this to you?
Absolutely.
Okay. Can I pass this down, Councilmember Crumick? And we will now proceed to the consent calendar. These items are considered routine in nature and are acted upon by a single motion unless requested by an individual council member or member of the public for special consideration. And at this time, are there any that are under special consideration?
3 and 4.
Me too.
Okay, we will be pulling items 3 and 4 to be discussed individually. Do I have a motion on the balance?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve items 1 and 2 on the consent calendar. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Motion passes 5-0 to approve items number 1 and number 2. And 2 council members had questions on 3. So, Councilmember Crumick?
Yeah, I was gonna pull 3 and 4 as well. Just want to know exactly a little bit more in detail what 3 is, Title 24, what that is, and what 4 is as well.
Well,
So-
Title 24 is an ordinance, buddy, that, it's for they use it for the energy calcs in a house and stuff like that.
Okay.
So this item, the California Building Code is updated every 3 years. So we had an update back in 2016, and then we updated it this year for 2020. So it'd be effective January 1st, 2020, 2019 California
So we kind of
Building
update
Code.
our code as California updates their code
Required to.
essentially.
Yeah,
Okay.
even if we were to not update it in our ordinance, it's still state law, so we go ahead and update it with our ordinance to meet the state standards. This item here is introducing and waiving the first reading of the ordinance and scheduling the public hearing, which will be at the December 2nd meeting, so we've got some time. We have some specific publication requirements we have to do in the newspaper. We also have a reformatted ordinance that was passed out to each of you, and I have some extra copies up here if anybody's interested. Everything is the same as in the agenda packet, it's just been reorganized where all of the items to each sections, there's 12 different sections of the building code having to do with all different types of things, has just been reformatted into the ordinance so that it's more effective at being passed and put into the code. So at our December 2nd meeting, we'll have the public hearing, and I'll also go over in detail specific ones that would be of more of an impact to us.
I'm just confused, I have a question, is the public hearing just to get people's feedback? I mean, if it's something we have to do in compliance with California law, it's
The
just to
public
hear.
hearing, same thing, in compliance with state law, but it is also to get people's feedback, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Well, my opinion on this problem with this number 3 is this. To get feedback, they'd have to know what they're asking the feedback on, and the problem is, nobody knows. These things come to us, and we pretty much go through them, but we really don't know what we're signing off on. I mean, we've passed these things for years, 25 years I've been here, we've been passing them. And no one's ever really taken the time to explain the upgrades, the changes, or anything. And here we are, we're gonna pass another one, and nobody really knows what the upgrades are.
So this right now is just the introduction of it and waiving of the first reading. At our second one is when we can go over all of the updates that will be going in, effective January 1st, and then that's when we would officially adopt it. So I will have a list of everything. One of them, of course, being the most commonly known one is that the solar systems, residential solar systems would be required on new housing. That's probably the biggest one, but there are a lot more updates. All of them are in relation to, moving forward with high efficiency, low gas emissions, switching over to electrical, requiring more electric use as opposed to gas use, those type of items. So that's what a majority have to do. The state wants everybody to move away from using gas and moving towards electricity as clean energy.
So they can,
Expensive.
so PG&E can shut it off.
There you go. There you go.
So, and I'll put together a listing, we can go over those
What I
changes.
don't understand is all these changes, they don't seem to really truly benefit as much as they're supposed to. I mean, we're adding the cost of building a house now. When they put sprinklers in homes, that was astronomical impact on home costs. Now you're gonna tell everybody you have to have solar panels. That's another pop.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That, by the way, when that's now a mandate, it's not optional in terms of property value. That now becomes an asset, part of your cost of building, which will affect your property taxes. And it's because of those types of things, I can't vote for this thing. It's gonna pass with my vote anyway, because it's a state mandate. But I won't agree to it. I'm tired of it. Enough is enough. We're getting to the point where we're putting people out of their homes because the cost of everything's going so right through the roof. This is another set of things that we truly need them.
Yeah, I would echo
I
that.
disagree with it.
Yeah, I would echo that it seems like whether we vote yes or no on it, we're complying with the California mandate. But I would agree that if you want solar panels, you can have them. If you don't, you don't. So I would agree with Mayor Pro Tem House on this.
Well, it is sort of ironic, all this done in on one side, and then on the flip side, just like what Mayor Pro Tem Alves had mentioned, all the additional restrictions, yet we want more building in California. Why aren't we building more? Well, I know why we're not building more, it's this stuff. What happens if we don't pass this tonight, if we don't approve this?
Then we just,
So I
Yeah.
can answer that,
Mhm.
I think. So
I'm
if
kinda
you don't
conflicted.
pass an ordinance incorporating it into your code, then it will still be, you'll still be subject to all the uniform codes. But the advantage to putting it in your ordinance is if there's a violation, if somebody doesn't comply, then it's a violation of your municipal code and you can enforce it. So if it's not in the code, then
So can we think of a situation where a lot of these, and I know staff sometimes hits a sticky wicket with a lot of these issues because, somebody will come in, they'll either want to permit, they'll realize they have to do this, that, the other thing, the staff says, we have to do it. Well, it wasn't staff's idea, it was the state's idea. And the state and the staff is merely enforcing what the state, of course, in this case, or if we approve it, what our implicit blessing is as well, which puts them in a bad situation because they're defending something that they may not believe in. We're therefore approving something we may not believe in. And so that's where you're left with this situation where, are we at much of an advantage just because we can enforce a code that we may not personally believe in ourselves?
Who's gonna enforce it if we don't have it as an ordinance?
Well, I think the building inspector is obligated to.
he would still enforce it, we just wouldn't be able to respond in violation of the municipal code.
How would he enforce it, though?
So when he goes out for his inspections,
He just
if
wouldn't
it's
approve
not
it.
going to pass building inspection,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he still has to comply with the laws of the state.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Well, on this issue, I will let you guys decide what you would like to do. If I suppose if it's, just a second, Kirk, I suppose if it's a nay, then I'm sure that it would be wise to accompany it with some letter to the state saying that this particular council is not in favor of this, and the state needs to know that. If that's the case. Kirk, you had a question, please.
Kirk Danziger, 389 Noni. You're probably not going to like this either. I have, for the last couple of planning commission meetings, suggested under new construction that we amend the building code to include either tankless water heaters or recirculation pumps in the effort to conserve water, and which we're going to be coming under constrictions here in the next, 3 to 5 years. It's just a little thing to help out with that. There should be some provision, and I'm not sure whether Dominic hasn't included this already, have you?
We've looked into it, yes, we were gonna put that in the next, at the public hearing, when we're going over things to change.
Okay, so you're going to...
But, no, but you can go ahead and talk about it, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not being a building expert here, I demur to Ed and so forth, but I can speak personally to it, and Ed can too. As far as hot water recirculation pumps, I'm saving all kinds of water by by going to my shower that's the farthest away from my water heater, and I turn it on, the water it's hot right now. I'm not waiting around for 10 minutes for that heat to come on. And I think there should be a limit, maybe new construction of homes over 1,000 feet. That's just arbitrary. I'm throwing it out there as a suggestion other people can fill in. With remodels, I'd hate to knock off somebody's solar project because this might hurt them, or make them think twice about doing that if they had to put this in there because of the cost of a project. So whatever the routine cost of solar is, maybe there's a cutoff there where you wouldn't be required to do that. If it went over what that cost would be, then you'd have to upgrade it. It's just like when you put on a roof. You got to put on spark arresters, you got to put in alarms in each bedroom, that kind of thing. And that way you can capture it, going
Crazy
forward.
idea, Kurt. Why don't we let the state give tax credits for all the things they're cramming down our throat? You wanna save water? Good idea. Give somebody a tax credit to go out and buy a recirculating pump. Give them a tax credit for the tankless water heater. Give them some tax credits. All they do is take and shove it down our throats. That's what I think I've had enough of. And I think, My vote is, probably doesn't mean squat, but you know what? I'm not gonna vote for it because I'm tired of it.
I think you have an opportunity tonight too, under the last agenda item, which is 1,600 fees, to give credit there for solar, for water. You could take some of that park money for that house and you could reduce it, or, you know, part there, part other places, to get these more efficient homes. May or may not be built in Escalon, you know, depending upon where we go in the next 10 years. But again, we're gonna have to show that we're complying or making an effort to conserve water, whether we like it or we don't, and just one way.
Well, the other way that would save water is when people can't afford it no more. That's usually what's gonna happen. It's like speeding. People don't speed because they don't wanna pay the ticket. The water's the same situation. When they get to the point where it's too expensive for them, they'll quit using that amount of water.
No, I understand.
You know, brief question to Kirk's point, to your point, Kirk. Now, the planning commission is looking at doing a couple of, you know, you said with water heaters and a couple specific.
I brought it up during communications. It wasn't anything on the agenda.
Right.
I brought that
But,
up years
yeah,
ago.
but the reason I'm asking that now, if we want
idea.
to have a regulation that is, let's say, more restrictive or something that fits Escalon, okay? If we do not approve this, are we still allowed to have that more restrictive regulation, or are we not?
You can have more, not less.
Yes, you could put more restrictions on like new construction.
Okay, even if this does not, even if we do not give this our blessing?
Well, that's your minimum.
Well, you'd have to amend the ordinance to put it in
You
there.
can't make amendments if you don't adopt them.
Right, right,
And if you adopt them, you can put in amendments. If you do nothing,
right.
they're just, it's gonna happen to
Then we
us.
cannot put the amendments in.
Well, it's gonna happen
You
to
can
us.
go up, but you can't go down.
Yeah, well, then that's what I'm saying, that- so therefore we cannot put the amendments in if we do not adopt this.
Well, you can on 16 when you have the fees and stuff. You can give credits for water, heaters, and all those things you're thinking that might save energy. Do it there.
Okay. Well, let's get this around to a decision of which, if there is no motion made, if there's no second, then obviously, then the subject dies as is. If there is a motion, and a second to approve, then that's fine too. What is your
Have you already
pleasure?
scheduled the advertisement for the public hearing?
Yes. So if you were to ask my recommendation on it, I would recommend that we at least introduce, waive the first reading, and have the public hearing. And then if you choose not to move forward with adopting it, we can do it at that meeting.
That's true, yeah, this is just to
Instead
have
of-
the public hearing,
Instead
yeah,
of killing it
yeah.
at the very beginning, let's at least take it through, since everything's already in motion.
Mm-hmm.
And I could put together items and get some more details on specifically what's updating, and I do have some information on the stuff that Kurt was asking at the planning commission level. And then we can move from there.
That might be a good idea, and the reason I say that is because to what you were saying about giving the public a chance to get input, I felt like it was a bit of a, well, what's the point, you know, of having the public input if the train's gonna go down the track anyway? So at least this gives them an opportunity to possibly make an impact. Council, what's your decision on this specific issue to go forward with a public hearing?
I think it's important that if we move forward, we waive the first reading, we get to a public hearing, we give the community an opportunity to give us their input. You know, ultimately, it's not our decision whether to, you know, just make the decision without input. I prefer to get the community's input on it and get some feedback from them. So I think it's important that we at least get to the public hearing. So I would move on staff's recommendation.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve item number 3. Is there a discussion on the motion?
So we're approving to move this forward to a public hearing.
Yes.
At which point, if we vote no, then we go through that.
Yes, that's specifically what we are doing,
Okay.
so.
I could agree with that.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Motion passes, or excuse me, item number 3 passes 5-0. Moving on to item number 4 on the consent calendar. And I think both council members, Crumick and,
Yeah, I just had a question again of, I think a lot of things sometimes are thrown in this consent calendar, and I just, you know, it's one vote, but consideration of adopting, can you go down a little bit? Oh, consider adopting, what is that exactly? Can you go through?
So, In 2006, there was a adoption of personnel rules. So the action tonight is repealing that resolution with those personnel rules and replacing it with the new personnel rules that are attached.
What has changed?
Primarily, most of the changes were done to be compliant with the law. And we merged some of our separate little policies for like cell phone use and discrimination and those kinds of policies all into the personnel rules themselves. They used to be separate policies.
Is this a kind of a booklet or a list of policies that, who creates that?
So this was done, so this was in front of the council on the August 19th meeting, and it was pulled, and the Personnel Committee, which is made up of Mayor Swift and Mayor Pro Tem Alves, reviewed and asked questions on it, which was what was asked, so that's why it's back in front of you. And your question was, I went over this with Liebert, Cassidy, and Whitmore. They are an attorney firm that helped me go through. Initially, we had, through our Risk Management Association, a complimentary review of our personnel rules at no cost. And they identified several areas where we were out of compliance with law. And so we went through it together, updated it, to be compliant with the law, and some areas where we had trouble deciphering for sure what it was supposed to be. We made some clarifications in it. I met with all of the employee groups, and they've all agreed to all of the changes that were made within the document also.
Thank you.
For me, after reading through it, it's 77 pages. To be honest with you, I couldn't read it all. I couldn't stand it. But I read through as much as I could of it. And what I get out of it is this: there's some changes made. One of the questions I have on the cell phone program, could you explain to me how our cell phone program works?
Well, we have certain positions that do have cell phones,
Now, are those cell phones the city cell phones or those personal cell phones?
city cell phones.
Okay.
So depending upon the position, there are cell phones. Some of the cell phones will stay at the facilities, and primarily managers take home their cell phones.
Okay. And so there's no personal phones that we're reimbursing anybody for?
No.
Okay, the other thing I noticed in this whole thing, there's some changes, but I understand we talked about this, and you told me most of this is state mandate, but I see a situation there where I really wonder if the tail's wagging the dog here. I really wonder whether or not this council really has as much authority. When I read through this thing and I see all the authority given to the city manager for their appointments, their personal, and all the other things they do, and I wonder myself, you know, how much more authority should we be giving the city manager? And this is not a personal thing against you personally. It's just the position itself. And I look at this council and I say, we're elected officials of this community, and our job is to make sure this community gets what they ask for through us. So before anything's done as a final thing, I don't see where a city manager should have a final say on anything without approval of this council.
Are you referring to both hiring and releasing?
And firing, absolutely.
So, there is state law that limits, the council involvement in there.
Well, I'm not suggesting we hire or fire them, but I think without hiring or firing, without our being told what was going on is more important. I think it's important that we have the knowledge of why you hired somebody or why you fired somebody.
So typically that is all, I mean, so positions are allocated within the budget. So if a position is in the budget, somebody leaves, then we replace that
I
person.
understand how that works. What I'm
Okay.
referring to is the individual. I mean, I think we should know who we're hiring before. I'll give you an example of what happened. A couple of years ago, we had a city manager who hired a assistant city manager who had all sorts of personal issues that were never brought to our attention. And he hired him without telling us. So consequently, we hired somebody who had gone through some serious turmoil that should have never, ever been hired in this town, ever. And he was hired. And that was not something the staff was aware of. Excuse me, not the staff, but the council. And that's the type of thing that concerns me, because we have a history with it now. And that same individual became our manager and then made a bigger mess before he left here. So here we go. We have the staff hiring someone without really communicating with the council, and we end up with somebody like that. That I disapprove of, and that's what worries me. Why, and again, it's not about you personally, it's that position that scares me, because you're not gonna be there forever, and neither am I gonna be here. What I'm worried about is in the future sometime, somebody rolls in here, we have somebody hire somebody, and we end up with another bozo. Why can't we have that information up front so we don't have to go through this like we did the back door the last time?
I would echo what Mayor Pro Tem Alves is saying, that it seems to me that there's a lot of latitude when it comes to hiring that doesn't come through the council. And in particular, if you wanted to hire an individual and it was gonna cost the city $100,000 all in to employ this person, that's $100,000 now that, you know, I feel like we kind of take it on ourselves, like, okay, how are we gonna pay for everything? That's kind of one of the main things up here. And I know that as a city administrator, that's your job as well, but I wonder what if there was, could we put something in there, or what's the law that, you know, sort of entry-level employees or anybody making less than, say, $40,000 a year, but anything above that has to be approved by council? What about that idea?
We should know who we're hiring before it's too
So,
late.
so, I mean, there are, privacy rules too that we have to follow. So when we go through the process of hiring an employee, we do a background on them, and that information is, it's not something.
How do you explain what happened back?
Well, I can't explain what happened then because I wasn't here.
That's what worries me.
What I'm saying is what our process is now requires that they go through a background.
Did
So,
back then too.
okay, so,
That's my point. The point is we have rules, but the rules are fluctuating depending on the situation.
so I would say it was a poor decision on that city manager. It's,
Horrible decision, it cost him
but
his
I don't
job.
think that
But the point is this, it cost him his job, but it cost us a lot of money. That guy practically bankrupted this town. And that's the type of stuff I don't wanna see us go through again. I wanna know that when we hire somebody at that level, that this council is okay with it. Now, again, I respect the ability of a manager to have the ability to have a good process and the rules to fall in place, but I still don't believe it's something that this council should be included in. Because ultimately, we're the ones carrying the bag.
and I can understand that for certain positions, but I don't think for all positions. I think
I
that
agree with
would
you.
be
I agree with you, but I
way
think
too,
When you hire upper staff, police chiefs, stuff like that, we should check off on that.
Well, we do check off on that, police chief, city manager. So the question is, at what point do you want to go, you know, do we want to do the hiring for Justin? Do we want to do the hiring
I don't think,
for
I wanna hire
Dominique?
Justin. I
you
wanna
know?
hire, if you're gonna hire an
Yeah.
assistant to the city,
Mhm.
you're gonna hire a lawyer, you're gonna hire anyone of any upper echelon. This council should check off on it.
Okay, well, what I'm saying is if we define that upper echelon,
So I'm looking at your municipal
You hire
code.
Justin, okay, well, that's good.
Your municipal code says that the city manager pursuant to this government code section, city manager has the authority to appoint and remove, with approval of the city council, all officers and department heads, including city treasurer, city clerk, and finance director, but excluding the city attorney.
Does she have the right to remove them without the approval of the council?
No.
So in other words,
And so
before
this
she
is
could remove them, she'd have to
officers
tell
and-
us.
Yeah, officers and department heads, not every employee.
you were quicker to find that than I was. I mean, I kept looking in here, because I know it was in here somewhere.
Okay, so
but
let
I-
me get
yeah.
this
It's
straight
under
here.
2.08060.
Let me get this straight.
Okay.
So what you're saying is, if she is to terminate, before she terminates, we'd have to approve that?
That's what it says.
Okay, so now,
And remove all officers and department heads.
that's fine.
when you say officers, is it referring to safety personnel or?
No, it would be like city, like finance, or it would, it's
And
just.
and
Department
more
head.
administrative
Yeah,
kind of
it's
positions.
department, it's department heads.
Okay,
Yeah.
now, to hiring, how's it go?
Same thing.
So in other words, she can go out and get a candidate, she, not her, but the manager can go out and get a position head and hire them with the consent of the council, but she can't hire them without our consent.
That's right.
Have you hired a department head since being city
Yes.
manager?
Mhm.
Has it gone before council?
No,
So that didn't comply with the ordinance?
No. And that's what I'm getting at. I think we just need to do that because ultimately it falls back on us. Because I had a bad taste in my mouth the last time we went through this, with the last city manager we fired because of it, and he brought us a nightmare, which we dealt with, and he's gone, thank God. But the point is, can we not do that again? So let's just be more transparent. When we hire people, let's go through the process, we have the rules. You're gonna hire somebody, you got somebody, great, let's talk about who it is. Council says, hey, good choice, or no, we're not doing this.
Define as a part, I'm not disagreeing with you, I just wanna
Yes.
get down to a specific definition so we can move on and get
Well,
this.
we have the rules in
Yeah.
place. The rules,
Right.
the rules
The
are
rules
in
are
place.
okay,
The
but-
problem is, we haven't applied them properly. We need to
Right.
apply those rules properly.
2.08.
That's my point.
So,
Point
so what Ann's reading, in terms of
B.
department heads, we have the ultimate,
Yeah.
we say yay or nay on them.
That's correct.
Okay,
She
and you're
brings-
okay, we're okay
I'm
with
good
that?
with that.
I think you're okay with that
So
too.
I'm okay with that.
When
We
you're
just need to
saying
actually
the
do it.
person who was hired, was that person hired as the assistant city manager?
That's
Yeah,
correct.
Yeah,
Well, that's not a department head, so,
What is that considered?
It's gotta be an officer though, right?
I don't think so.
It's like the vice president.
Not an assistant city manager.
The real-
It would be
the-
like well, it'd be like, obviously the police chief,
Well, I
public
believe that
works
person
director,
we're talking
planning
about should
director.
be
What?
brought up the same way. If
Okay.
we ever
It's-
hire assistant city manager, I want it
Uh-huh.
to go the same process.
Okay.
Because I do not want to endure what we did before. There's no excuse for it. I mean, what happened to us, we got backdoored on it. The person who did it got fired for it, and he should have been fired because it was wrong what he did. And this town doesn't deserve a non-transparent government. They need to know exactly what they're getting, what they're getting. This council is elected by these people to make sure that doesn't happen again. And it's not gonna happen again, because that's what we're talking about tonight. We wanna make clear on that from now on, that stuff goes through this council.
Can I get some clarification on the question I had? So, we have hired a department head without city council approval, right? Which is what it states in the ordinance, right?
Correct.
Okay, so is that considered a whoopsie or an oversight or what is that if we don't follow an ordinance?
You have the discretion to follow your ordinances or not, pretty much.
Who is
The
we?
city
Us
council.
or-
Yeah,
Well, if
the
we
city
never
council.
knew about it,
Yeah.
it would just be a lot wiser to follow them, especially
Yeah.
with everybody watching,
I
so
don't-
I
I
think we
don't
should
think-
follow that.
so let me just
I
ask
think it'd
this,
be very
Gary.
good to follow
But
them.
it doesn't, oh yeah, I'm sorry, it does.
So basically, all I'm saying tonight is this. I would like us to try to stay closer to those rules when it comes to rehiring people and department heads, vice, or assistant city managers, anyone of any magnitude in this city government staff. I think it's critical that this council is involved in it.
That verbiage is there for department heads.
It is.
The
Correct.
verbiage is not there for assistant city manager,
Well, let's put it in
correct?
there.
That's right, that's correct.
That's what I think
We need to
is what
amend
we're
it.
looking for,
Let's amend it.
you know.
But I don't
So-
even think
Include
that's
some
a
more positions,
position.
too.
I don't even
We
think
don't
that-
even have that as a
Well, what if
position
we
at this
didn't-
time.
We didn't have the
Yeah.
rule, then what would happen?
And you'd have to update the ordinance.
There
Mm-hmm.
you go. Why don't we beat that? Do it.
Gary, you had a question?
That position would have to be in the budget you approve. If you don't approve the budget with that position in it, it doesn't go anywhere.
Precisely.
True,
Or you can be
but the-
proactive and put it in there so if it ever did happen, you got it covered.
I would be leaning towards what, Mayor Pro Tem, you just said, and I tell you why, because if there ever is an assistant city manager's position in the budget, that council, are they gonna be thinking about, oh, wait, do we want to approve this thing? Do we want to approve the hiring of that individual, whoever that individual will be down the road? You know, and so if we don't have any language in there, it's gonna be very easy to just have that not happen and therefore run the risk of making the same mistake again that, you
That's
know,
correct.
was made years ago.
Well, amending an ordinance is a little involved as well, so
Yeah.
better to do it now.
You do
Right.
it now instead of later.
So if it was done now, and I think if the verbiage is in there, it talks about department heads, I mean, how hard would it be to put in an amendment, you know, assistant city manager position?
You do like an executive member or something.
Sure, yeah.
Do it
Yeah.
for the next meeting.
Literally those
Two
words.
meetings and then 30 days to go in effect.
Do it.
Okay, 2 meetings and then this will come back, right?
And
2
then it
meetings.
would take 30 days to go into
Okay.
effect.
I want to make sure I have consensus on that first, though.
I'd make one quick comment that I think that maybe a conversation like this could come off as a little bit, not confrontational, but, you know, who's got the power to do with this or that. But I think really what it comes down to, just to clarify, is I think up here, at least speaking personally, I feel a tremendous amount of weight on, from the community just living here, being up here, that we want to do the right thing. We want to have the checks and balances. We just don't want stuff to go through. We just don't want it to be able
Yeah, no,
to,
yeah.
to go through without a second or a third check. It's just good policy, and that's kind of, I think, my reason for that.
I'd echo that.
That sounds reasonable. So do we have consensus to add that verbiage in?
Do you wanna vote?
I don't know if it
Well,
really,
it's not
really.
on the agenda, so we'll just take
Okay.
direction to.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We'll
so
bring
it's
it back.
direction to council, but are we not adopting the personnel rules tonight then?
Can we adopt it with that amendment?
Well,
Well,
this is a
the
totally different.
personnel rules are not the ordinance.
Yeah.
That's why we're gonna have to go
It's
through the
two
ordinance
separate
process.
items. So the
Okay.
personnel rules are adopted via a resolution.
Right, right, right.
And the ordinance would be a separate matter to take care of.
So I will need action on item number 4, the rules
I
tonight.
wanna make
then.
another comment.
Go ahead, go ahead.
And the other thing I wanna say is this, those rules are 77 pages long. I'll challenge anybody in this room to tell me they know all about them. There's no way. So we're signing off on stuff we don't really know what we're signing off on, is my feeling. And I really hate doing stuff like that, cause it always comes back to bite you. So what I'm suggesting is, we need to start learning more about what we're signing off on. And we need to have that stuff put in front of us, and if it means an extra committee meeting or whatever, we need to do it. Because we shouldn't sign off on stuff we don't even know what we're signing off on.
So
That's
again,
why it was continued from the August meeting.
I understand that, and I had an opportunity to do it, but it's a big task, 77 pages of rules going through and
Yeah,
all that.
I understand that. I went through the process.
And on the flip side, you get to a point where, if you're a council member and you're trying to study as much as possible about a specific, and I hate to use the word minutia, but that's the first word that's popping into my head about some of these positions. I think I don't disagree with you at all. I just think it's challenging. I think probably everybody in whatever field of endeavor that they've been in their job, I'm sure they've all had manuals, this thick, if not more. And I don't know if anybody in this room with their specific job, if they knew every word up and down with their manual, it's always a good idea.
I don't
We'll not
suggest-
disagree at
I
all,
don't
but,
suggest they know every word.
yeah.
But they should get the gist
The
of what's
gist of
going
it,
on.
yeah.
And that's what I did. I kinda went over it and dug through what I could see.
I did too. I did
Yeah,
too.
And it just overwhelms you how much there is.
It's a lot.
I mean, I don't have 8 hours a day, 5 days a week to sit in an office and go over this stuff. I'm
a lot
out
to
working,
it.
trying to make a living like everybody else, so I'm doing the best I can to represent this community the best I can. So I just think it's more important we have more transparency in this sort of stuff.
So where are we at with item number 4 in terms of an action on it?
So I think that there's two separate issues. We're approving the new personnel system, which has nothing to do with the ordinance we were just talking about.
Correct.
So
We're sending the ordinance down the
that-
line. That's going to be worked on.
that being said, I would move to approve the new personnel system rules and regulations.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the new personnel system rules and regulations. Is there any discussion on the motion on the table? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay.
Nay.
Okay, motion passes 4-1, and we'll be expecting an ordinance
Upgrade.
Yeah,
soon.
we'll come back, we'll update this.
Very good.
Because it's not clear who officers are. We'll talk about that.
Yeah, it's another, yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Appreciate it. Staff communications.
Just a reminder, City Hall will be closed on Monday for the Veterans Day holiday. And there is the parade, and they do have their barbecue at the community center. Then November 1st bills went out, and they did include the questionnaire regarding the sales tax measure. And we, when we reached out to our third party, they don't just put the postage on the stamps, so we actually had to go through a process and get a business reply envelope, which we did have to pay a little bit of a processing fee on that, but then we only pay for the envelopes that come back to us through the mail. So it's probably gonna work itself out on that. But we've already gotten a few today, so they are out there. And then in a conversation today with a resident, we were talking about potentially doing Adopt a Planter program on Main Street. And basically it would be where groups would enter into a contract with the city, to maintain either a planter or multiple planters. Give them the ability to post their sign or get recognition for it. But, it would be similar to that of like Adopt a Highway or a roadway. Is this something that the council would support, staff looking into to see if maybe other cities do this? My initial thought is that we would do like the staple greenery shrubs in there, and then they would plant the flowers around it and maintain that for us. The city would still be responsible for the irrigation.
Yeah, I suppose as long as there's some basic, guidelines as to what they can plant. I mean, we probably don't want them to
True.
plant a 6-foot high shrub in the,
You might wanna offer them a list to pick from.
yeah, yeah.
What kind of signage did you have in mind?
Well, just like a small sign in the planter that says, adopted by, whichever group it is that's adopted it.
As long as they know, there might be certain times of the year that those wonderful looking plants might get a little beating. Okay, park feet, other parades,
I don't
things
know.
like that.
Yeah, I think when you look at a nice street or a downtown, if all of the planters, there's kind of a uniformity, there's a nice sort of aesthetic look to landscape design. And if you're gonna have one person planting a rose bush and one person planting California
Well,
poppies, it's,
I mean, we could, and this is the feedback, that we need, because the contract could be that we give them what plants to plant, and they have to maintain them.
And maybe you're restricted to just certain planters. You have some large
That would make a
planters
lot
out
more
there,
sense. That would make a
Yeah.
lot more sense to have, to pick from a list, and so we don't get a hodgepodge of a mess, like Peter's recommending we don't do, and I agree.
All right, no, yeah, uniformity is kind of sort of nice.
Okay,
Okay?
I'll do a little bit of more research then on that. Just a reminder, November 13th, next, Wednesday at 6 o'clock is the wastewater treatment plant study.
Yes, November 13th, Wednesday.
6:30?
6 PM.
6 PM,
so Andy will be there?
correct. I'm done.
Me too.
And then I just have a reminder from the last meeting that we rescheduled our planning commission meeting for this month for Tuesday, November 19th. We'll also be holding it an hour earlier at 6 PM, because we have a lot of items moving forward, including the updated housing element, as well as some updated general plan amendments. And once those are reviewed and recommended by the planning commission, they will be coming to the council in December,
December 19th,
December 2nd.
2nd, is we're gonna have that bigger meeting?
That's where we have our housing element so far is scheduled for the 2nd.
How is that how is the wastewater treatment plant study meeting being advertised?
It was in Escalon Times, and I don't recall if I asked for staff to put it on Facebook, but
Okay.
we can.
Okay, please.
Is it on the sign?
I'm not sure. I don't recall. I'll double check it.
Well, I mean, any kind of input, the more people, then the better. I was really happy to see, those who came to the water rate study, the other night. And I hope that everybody knows in the community that, that'll come back and there'll be another opportunity to talk about that as well. But like I say, it just needs to be advertised, beating the drums. I know everybody here in the audience will talk to other people, but still, to get more and more people here is a good thing. So any chance we have to advertise all these issues, be very good. So, anything else under staff communications? No? Okay, we'll go to matters presented from the audience. And at this time, the public may address the city council on any item not on the agenda, but however is within the authority of the council. And I'd like to keep you to 5 minutes if at all possible, and unused time may not be yielded to another speaker. Speaker number 1.
Barbara Willis, 425 Sultana Way. A week ago, Mayor Swift dropped in on the senior lunch at the community center to answer questions and find out the concerns of the seniors who were in attendance, as well as the volunteers who were working there. One common theme was the excessive speed of the vehicular traffic on Escalon-Balota Road. And the police department apparently is in agreement, as they have placed a volunteer officer at the crosswalk to help seniors cross from Heritage House over to the community center and back for the lunch. One incorrect perception that Mayor Swift expressed was that all the senior diners were from Heritage House, and that's incorrect, and it could be a view held by other people. There are 4 or 5 that come across from Heritage House, and the rest of the 24 or so come from the community of Escalon, as well as one individual from Valley Home. And regardless of where they live, nearly all expressed concern about excessive speed, especially on Escalon-Balota. An upshot of the session was that I agreed to represent the group at city council meetings and share the concerns that are expressed. Vehicles that are northbound on McHenry, when you reach the city limits where the sign says 40 miles per hour ahead, you have 0.4 miles to decrease your speed and another 1.3 to get to 30 miles per hour at Highway 20. So it's 1.7 miles to drop down from 55 to 30. And there's a slowing mechanism, a traffic light at First Street, and then the railroad tracks. If you're eastbound, you cross the city limits at 50 miles an hour, you have 0.4 miles to decrease from 40 to 30, which is only 10 miles. And then again, there's a railroad track that serves as a slowing mechanism. If you're westbound, you cross the city limits between 40 and 50 miles per hour, you drop down to 40 in 0.1 miles to 30 in 0.2, and then the lighted crosswalk in another 1.1 miles for a total of 0.4 miles. So it's the same as the other direction. However, vehicles that are southbound on Escalon-Balota have a speed limit of 45 at the city limits, 0.2 miles to decrease to 30 miles per hour, and another 0.1 to reach the lighted crosswalk. That's only 0.3 miles to drop 15 miles per hour, and there's no slowing mechanism unless you count the crosswalk, which might be in use, and if it's observed by the drivers. Since the distance traveled between the city limits and the speed limit of 30 is so much shorter, there seems to be a need for additional traffic calming. Suggestions were made at the meeting, at the lunch, speed bumps be used, speed humps, and other devices, and there are cost and effectiveness factors associated with each. But the feelings expressed by the group was mainly that some measure be taken to slow down traffic before a tragedy occurs. Other items, could the city work with the county to adjust the speed limit as they approach the city limit, or could the city annex land and then change gain control of the speed limit as it approaches the city limit? One thing that occurred to me as I was out looking, we've got a median in McHenry, and we also have one up on Escalon-Balota. What about a sign in these medians? As people approach, we could have a sign about now entering Escalon, a community where people are proud to be here or whatever. It seems like that would have a dual effect. It would show that the people in Escalon are proud of their community, as well as maybe slow the drivers down to take notice of it, to read it. And it could be attractive, like the sign at Premier Brands, stucco and wood, or like at Crossroads in Riverbank, not with a guy fishing off the top, but something that's and the median is narrow, but you could slant the sign so that it could be visual, and it seems like that might have an effect of slowing down some traffic, as well as any of these other measures that I mentioned.
Is there any way that you can give a copy of that, or that copy, to, I would imagine, what, Tammy, to give it to the chief? Because I really wish he was here tonight, because I know that he could be able to speak on that pretty well.
Yeah,
Is that okay?
I've got some handwritten stuff in the margin, but I could.
Or to just copy the next day,
Or
right?
you can email it
Yeah.
to us.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
yeah.
He
The
can also
police
watch-
volunteer could drop it by tomorrow.
He can also watch YouTube.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He may be watching YouTube.
Oh, yeah. But, and there may be other concerns that I'll bring to you in the future, but this
Please.
was the first one that was voiced by nearly everyone there.
Yeah, no, and like I say, they spent a while on it. It's a big issue, and I think that if there's something that we can do, and I'm sure there's gotta be something, I think it'd be a great idea to look into. So, and by the way, you will be, what, tomorrow? Tell them thanks again for being so vocal and, you know, giving their input, you know, as freely as they did. I really do appreciate it, you know.
Thank you for
and
coming by.
It's a big help, you know, so.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
but please, if you can't get a copy of that to Tammy, tomorrow we get it to Chief, and then, hopefully you can report back, or the next meeting, we'll see what, you know, what response he has to that, and see what ideas are out there for that.
Okay.
Okay?
There's some drunk bums there,
Some what?
drunk bums.
That's the median.
No,
Yeah.
it's just to get your attention. Like on Live Road where you're going towards Stoddard,
Mhm.
those 5 sets or something like that. Drunk bums.
Well, I know there's another spot that I'll talk about during council communications that, you know, may not be a bad idea to do some additional measures, but this is your time. I don't want to take that from the audience right now. Who else would like to speak?
Dave Willis, 425 Sultana Way. Just something I want to add to what my wife has just said. At the end of the last senior get-together on a Wednesday, I had a group of about 5 seniors ready to cross at the crosswalk. And there was a pickup truck coming, doing this, and I was going to let him go before I hit the button. Well, somebody there must have hit the button because the pickup truck started to slow. In fact, it came to a stop. There was a large truck coming up behind it way too fast, and he was gonna jackknife had not that pickup truck stepped on the gas and I'd kept the people don't cross the street. And he shot ahead, and when that truck finally did kind of straighten out and pass him, there had to be less than an inch between, but I thought they had contact because when he hit the brakes again, something that proved to be pallets in his back of the pickup truck that slid forward, and that's why I thought they had made contact. We were that close to possibly, because if he'd have hit that pickup truck where it was sitting at the angle he was, it might have come through where we were standing. Thank you.
With any luck, hopefully the gentleman in the semi had at least change his underwear.
Well, they all did stop. I did call an officer, 'cause
Yeah.
like I thought they hit, and everybody talked, everybody was fine. Yeah, and I bet you he did.
I hope he did.
I bet you
I hope he learned a lesson, and I hope it started with that.
both of them.
Kurt?
Once again, Kurt Danziger, 389 Noni. I was looking at my water bill and thinking of Ed Alves, and you know, how can we save money for the city or make money for the city? And I don't know the answer to this question, so I'm bringing it up. And I thought, well, you know, we charge $4 and some odd cents for people to use a credit card to pay their water bill. And first off, I don't know if that can come down. Second off, what does it cost us to mail these out? To process them, put them in an envelope, mail them out, bring them back in, and reprocess them there. I don't know if the costs bear out, but it's just I had a thought. Along that line, looking at the tax initiative, it's just not worded right. You know, there's nothing in there that says, well, I've come here, so I know what you're saying. People out there reading that, I would think are confused. And I sent mine back saying I will not vote for a general fund tax at the 51%, but I will if it's at 67 and the money goes directly to the police department. And that's my criteria for it. So when I see it on the ballot, that's what you're gonna get. And I think, reading it, it doesn't say any of percentages to pass this, to pass it that way. So just so that you're aware, you may wanna rewrite that when you put it on the ballot, because you're gonna confuse people. And I'm easily confused. A couple of things about the reports. Water rate report. If you don't read anything else, if you would turn the first page over and read what the study person had written down. It's almost like they don't stand behind it. You know, it's there's all these variables and this and that. And I'm reading that, and I'm thinking, what are we paying for here? Especially since they have 5 years of empirical data before them, and they can tell us what's the likelihood of how this is going to come to fruition based on what they're telling us this time. So before they come back, if they could give us a summary of, you know, what they had proposed 5 years ago and how that came about, and, you know, did we end up with those extra funds in those different accounts to stave off emergencies, you know, blah, 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 whatever it was. I just think you need to include that in this water study. The last thing is the PACE report, and I gotta just ask her, will that be out before Wednesday?
I'm not sure. I have to reach out to Andy and find out if he's got the analytical data yet that he was waiting for.
That's gonna be a lot of stuff to digest, so it'd be nice if it was online
Yeah.
beforehand.
Nice to have maybe a meeting about it. Maybe we should sit down and talk about it as a group.
That's
That's
up to
what
you
the
guys.
workshop is for.
We're gonna have the workshop?
Yeah.
There you
November
go.
13th.
We're gonna have it on the 13th. That's okay.
Yeah, but I think what Kirk was saying is it'd be nice to have that information out and published beforehand, just so you get, you know, you read it once, or you try to read it once, and you try to read it twice, and you get a third exposure when he's explaining it. So maybe by then, because there's a lot of meat to this thing, by then you're beginning to get a grasp on what the devil he's talking about, you know. So, yeah, if that's possible, that would be a great idea. Who else would like to speak? No? Seeing none, we'll move to administrative matters. And item number 5. Item number 5 is consideration of allowing nonprofit rates for Escalon Union High School Decade of the 60s class reunion for the rental of the community center. I imagine I'm going to give this, Tammy, you're taking this, right?
Yeah. So the Escalon Union High School Decade of the 60s Class Reunion Committee submitted a letter requesting the council consider granting them nonprofit rental rates for the community center on September 26th and the 27th of 2020. In May 2018, the council did adopt an ordinance that established the guidelines regarding the requirements for the reduced fees at the city's facilities, which included that it was an Escalon-based nonprofit with half of the nonprofit entities members residing within the 95320 zip code, or they were a senior-based group, 65 years or older, holding social functions open to the public. The entity is recognized as a nonprofit under the Internal Revenue Code. This group is not recognized as a nonprofit entity, and therefore they do not qualify based on the guidelines. In 2015, the same organizers were granted nonprofit rental rates for the 1964 and 65 reunion. Attached to the staff report is a letter submitted by Escalon Union High School Decade of the 60s Class Reunion Planning Committee. And again, they're asking the council to consider allowing them the nonprofit rates for September 26th and 27th of 2020.
Move to approve.
I'd second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the nonprofit rate for the Escalon Union High School Decade of the 60s class reunion for the rental of the community center. Is there any discussion on the motion?
I have a little discussion. So I think that with this community center, it comes up so often that you have different groups coming that want the reduced rate, right? Because they're either nonprofit or they're this or that. The thing I come back to is that the community center, as far as I understand, is kind of a losing venture right now. It's not rented out enough annually to pay for what it costs annually. Is that correct?
Correct.
I think that we are doing ourselves a disservice by even having a discounted rate. I think we should have one rate, and that it should be set in accordance with what we think it's going to be rented out to pay for the community center. We should treat it like the community center is to pay for itself. That's what I think. And so we have an $800 thing or a $400 thing, and the people come and they go, well, please give us the discount, because I just think I really think it's a waste of time. I think that I would have one fee to rent the community center out. It's $1,000 for an event, or $500, whatever. But I think we should pick a fee. We should do away with a nonprofit fee and a for-profit fee. Because, for instance, Kiwanis, when we rent it out, yes, we're a nonprofit, right? So we get the discounted rate, but we make $20,000 at that event. So in that being said, and I want different organizations to keep more of their money, I get it. But from a fiscal perspective with the city, I am in favor of looking at that community center fee and having one set flat fee. That's my opinion on that.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Crumick. Is there any other discussion on the motion on the table?
Well, I think we just went through this, revising this policy not too long ago, and this group does not qualify.
They don't qualify.
So, you know, I kind of agree that maybe we're spinning our wheels here. We pass this thing, we set this criteria, and then we grant people that don't qualify the rate.
No, we haven't did others that didn't qualify.
We have done others.
We have not.
We have not,
No,
okay.
no. Since we adopted this new policy,
All
we
of them
have not.
qualified.
All of them have qualified.
Okay, okay.
So is there any further discussion on the motion on the table?
I would just like to say that the community center is not a moneymaker, without a doubt. And I do understand Peter's philosophy, but I will tell you one thing, the key word here is that center out there is called community. That is your community center. It is exactly what it means. It's where people can come and do things, and it's a community. And yes, it's not gonna make us a lot of money, but there are certain things in a community you don't make money on, and that just seems to be one of that and recreation. But it does allow you to have a community that is cohesive, that is a community-minded, and sometimes you give to get.
Yeah, I'm not arguing any of that. What is the fee for the nonprofit again?
It's half the cost of the rental fee, so it's $450.
As opposed to
Or
900?
$425, I'm sorry, it's $425.
Okay.
Instead of $850.
What would it take to make it a flat fee of $425? I mean, if it's not gonna make money, okay, but to simplify things, to make
For
it
everyone?
for everyone, is that an ordinance change?
That's going to be a significant hit to the general fund because we're going to subsidize it even more.
Even more.
I really just, I don't know. In my opinion, I think we should have a flat fee, whatever the rate is.
If the council wants to bring that back for further discussion, it'd have to be at a future meeting.
Right.
I do, I don't know if anybody
The
else
only
does.
thing that's on the
Yeah, it wouldn't
agenda
hurt.
now is this one particular.
Right.
I think we have two.
Well, it's on the agenda, and again, at this point, it's a motion. Now, we can decide this yea or nay tonight, but we can also go, if we want consensus, go further with that. But let's do that right after this motion. And I agree. Like I say, it has been, we did try to redefine a few things a couple years ago. Unfortunately, I think the cost of the community center, trying to make it profitable, I think unfortunately or unfortunately, maybe it was inevitable. That die was cast when that community center was redone a decade, like 12 years ago. And I think that you would probably find, if you really ran the numbers, you could probably rent it out every weekend, and it's still not going to break even. And again, like Mayor Pro Tem Al said, it is something that is for the community. It's a quality of life issue, just like the recreation program. There are certain things that any municipality, any public entity will admit, and that's been consensus of the community, that this particular profit center is not going to be a profitable profit center. However, it is a value to the community as a whole. And again, this is an example of, many of these people have been a part of the community for, well, literally 50 some odd years, often more. And it's their money that's gone into this community center as well as our money. And so, that's how I feel about it. Is there any further discussion on the motion on the table?
Yeah, just to qualify, I'm not arguing that the community center is a community place and that if it's a loser, it doesn't make any money, then okay. But I think we should have a flat fee, and I think it would streamline and make our local government more efficient, which I think is a worthy thing to do.
Okay. Is there any further discussion on the motion on the table to, and I'm going to reiterate it, to allowing the nonprofit rate of Escalon Union High School Decade of the 60s class reunion for the rental of the community center? Is there any further discussion on this motion on the table? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay.
Nay.
Motion passes 3-2. Public hearing to consider the following. Item number 6, public hearing, oh, excuse me, let me back up a minute. On this last subject, is there a consensus and desire of the council to review this in terms of looking at finding an event to have charge a flat fee at the community center? And if so, how would you want that to be structured? And Councilmember Cromwell, I'm gonna ask you that question.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. I don't have the actual number. I say, you know, if you split the difference, it's 900, it's 450. We pick something in the middle and we go, that's our number, that's our fee. I just think, I would just like to simplify the process as my main goal here. I don't want to lose money. Let's price it to where we don't, you know, so, but I think it's possible to streamline this process a little bit. So that's what I would say.
Okay.
I don't have anything else.
All right, I'm gonna be in a tight spot here because I'm gonna be asking for a council consensus, look into something further that I personally, I don't feel like we should.
I think it's fine.
Okay.
You're okay with looking at a flat fee?
No, I'm okay even where it's at.
Okay.
At this time. So,
Flat fee's not gonna change, it's just gonna make it more complicated.
Okay.
Plus, you're gonna lose more money.
I think it would make the same amount of money and be less complicated.
Okay.
Okay, I think we're at where we're at right now, so let's go on to item number 6. Public hearing for annual report of AB 1600 fees as required by government code, and I believe that's you, Tammy.
Correct. So, before you tonight, the council is asked to conduct a public hearing and receive comments regarding the annual report of the AB 1600 fees that is required by the California Government Code. California Government Code Section 66,000 through 66,008, commonly referred to as AB 1600, requires that local agencies that collect fees from developers as a condition of development hold a public hearing on an annual basis to report the amount of fees collected, expenditures made from these funds. The report was completed and made available to the public on November 28th, 2018, meeting the requirement, I'm sorry, that is the wrong date. It was made available on October 15th of 2019, meeting the 15 days prior to the city council meeting. It provides specific information regarding the types of development fees, their amounts, purposes, balances, interest earned for each, and current and ongoing improvements funded by the various fees. The fees referenced in the report are development fees only, not user fees. These are one-time fees assessed on new development. In accordance with the California State Annual Reporting Requirements, staff has prepared the following exhibits: a brief description of the development impact funds, a summary of the current and past fees, beginning and ending balances for each fee account, total fees collected, interest earned, and total expenditures from each account for the fiscal year of 2018-19. And Exhibit C is a summary of a summary by fund of public improvement projects on which the fees were expended during the fiscal year 2018-19.
So, Mr. Mayor, there's no action required, just a public hearing to receive
Well,
comment.
Let's go ahead and dive right into the public hearing. I don't hear anybody up here want to say anything originally, so let's go dive in the public hearing. Public hearing declared is open. And would anybody from the audience like to speak on these fees and where they've gone and what's been spent?
Can't read it, it's too small.
Can you read them now?
Cover your left eye, Dave.
They're very, very small, huh? I'm gonna give everybody a few minutes, if that's okay, because I know there's a lot to digest here. Okay.
I would just like to say that I've been here for quite a few years, and I've never seen anybody come in from industry and argue against these fees.
Let me have Councilmember, I'm not closing the public hearing yet, but let me have Councilmember ask a question. I'm going to assume it's the
My-
staff, so go ahead, go for it.
It's, I don't know if it's the staff, it's a general, it's just an idea. We talked about, the new things are handing us on an annual basis from the state mandates and also everything else that get rammed down your throats. And what I'd like to see is somewhere along the line that we find a way to support these types of ideas through credit to the individual getting stuck with all these new great ideas we've come up with for them. So, for example, if somebody wants to install a tankless water heater or a circulating pump like Kurt brought up, maybe we should add some incentive to that. So those people are more encouraged to do it. It benefits us in the long run, we're gonna save water, and it's gonna benefit them, they're gonna save money to pay for the rest of the stuff they're getting stuck with. But I think we ought to look at something like that for a change. If we're gonna ask for all these people to do these things, let's give them some incentive to do it.
I have a comment too on that,
Go ahead.
or a question, sorry. I just want to clarify, so, Mayor Pro Tem Alves, you're suggesting if somebody puts in a tankless water heater, something that benefits the community by saving money, maybe the city could give them some sort of break?
Well, we'd have to talk about what the incentive would be, but I would like to see us brainstorm something that would offer some incentive for people to be more frugal with their water and other items that we need to be cutting back on, or anything we do in this town that would encourage a plus for us. I think we should encourage it.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I think it's something we should look at, because again, we talked about this last meeting, where we take, we give nothing back. I wanna start showing this town that we're willing to help them help us, rather than us just telling them, here it is, pay for it. So that's something I'd like to bounce around and think about how to deal with it. I understand we're not a gold mine, we can't give away all our money, but I know incentives placed in the right places would benefit us greatly. Water reduction would be a big plus if we had people, if everybody in this town had a circulating pump in their house, trust me, Kurt was right. You're gonna save a whole lot of water. And those pumps use a fraction of electricity.
I have a question. Tammy, is it possible on the water bills, because I assume it's a basic spreadsheet where you have somebody and you have their balance and what they owe and everything. Is it possible to like apply a credit? So say somebody installs something that's gonna save water, give them a credit of X amount of dollars, and it goes towards their balance.
We would have to establish an ordinance or some kind of a program that addresses the amount and how it's gonna be dispersed. I mean, we don't have those answers, or I don't think we have the mechanisms in place to deal with it. That's why we're.
So I took this, that these credits would be more or less along the lines of during the building permit process.
Well, there's that, but there's also the retros. I mean, yes, I do like the idea of pre-building, and I do like the idea of retro, because retro is where we're gonna get our biggest turnover, because nobody has those circulating pumps, very few people do. And they're very inexpensive to install, and they're not hard to install. I mean, an average homeowner could probably do it on his own. And I think the cost of that pump is like somewhere around $130, $140. And really, it just goes on top of your water heater, and you just move one pipe over to another side, and boom, and you gotta have a plug for it, and it has a dial on top. You can set the time, or you can leave it on all the time. It's that simple. And it saves, because like Kurt says, that the water is instantly in your furthest place in your house, because there's a manifold that's about this big that goes to the furthest part of your house, and it is allowing that water to be pushed to that point, and that water gets there, and once it reaches there, it stops. But the water that was before it, which was warm, now goes to the cold side. So when you turn on your hot water, it's hot. Your cold's a little warm, but it gets cold quickly. But that's the process without repiping your house. So it's not expensive to do. Now, if you had to repipe it, that's a whole different ballgame. But this is a retro for any house, anywhere, and that you have a long distance where water has to travel. So it would save you a ton of water.
Would that be like a new ordinance we'd pass or a law?
Do an ordinance.
Yeah, that's not what we're talking about.
I was about to say, that, yeah, let me get back to this and see if the audience has any questions at this
Well,
point.
I just-
That's a very good idea, don't get me wrong.
Well,
I just, yeah.
I just think we need to be a little more proactive.
Mhm.
And I wanna show this community, we're not always taking from them, because that's all we do. We raise their taxes all the time, that's all we do. Oh, we give them service. Well, yeah, but we pay for that service. It's not a gift. So I'd like to show the community that we're there to help them as much as they can try to help us. That's what I got to say.
I'm hoping everybody on YouTube land just heard this and they're thinking about, hey, wait, this tankless water heater concept, that sounds like a good
It
idea.
is a good idea.
Yeah, so,
It'll save
yeah.
the city a ton of water.
Is there any questions from the audience regarding this public hearing before I close it? And Ann, I think like you said, there's no need for action on it tonight, just information.
Food for thought.
Any questions from the audience?
Yeah, I have one question. When you put in a new water heater with or without it, does that require a permit?
It does.
Yes.
Technically.
And you, technically, yeah. Rules, follow the rules, okay.
If you do it yourself, you don't have to have a permit. If you have a contractor do it, you need a permit.
Well, yeah, that seems like
Either way.
if it's put in
Either way.
wrong.
Either way.
Either way you should.
If it's put in wrong.
Yeah, we're saying either way.
Way? Well,
No, you're right.
Are there any,
Oh, really? The owner-builder still has to have one?
Yes.
getting into a Home Depot commercial here?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Anybody have any questions pertinent to this issue?
Double strapped, right?
No? I'm going to close the public hearing, and I'm going to ask and see if there's any final council comments regarding this issue. Not that the other issues are not good, because they're very important, but this issue, are we okay with this?
I don't have a problem.
Yes,
with
yes.
construction.
Yes, yes.
It is what it is.
I did have a question. So I know that we had talked about incentivizing certain things, business, commercial development, town. Commercial development seems to be something that everybody's in favor of, while residential development is one that people are not so hot on. But this affects commercial development too. So I'm thinking, I wonder if we put together some sort of almost like a stimulus package or some incentive package where, what if we said, if you build in our town, we will waive certain fees? Is that something that's possible? Can we, huh?
They did that in Modesto. They offered it to an oil company, came in and,
Did it work?
yes, it does work. But you gotta find, it's a good marriage. You gotta make the right marriage. It's not gonna work
Yeah.
every time. You have to look at it.
Well, I'm wondering, how do
That's
we,
like a development agreement.
It is a development agreement.
it's a development agreement?
Agreement.
Let's put it this way, Peter, if the right company came to Escalon, under the right circumstances, I think we could work a deal with them to give them enough incentive to do something. But it would have to be beneficial for the community.
So, okay, that's what I'm a little confused on. We have the ability to not follow this fee structure if we want. We can change it based upon who comes in, right? If a business comes to town we really want, we can go, guess what, we're gonna give you a break. Is that possible?
Through a negotiated agreement, yes.
That's right.
Okay, so, what? It's not in stone, all right.
So does anybody have any further questions as to how these monies were spent this last year? Nope. Okay. Well, then we're good to go, right? No action on this item. And let's go to council communications. Councilmember Crumick.
All right. Thank you, Mayor Swift. I do have a number of things and some questions and such. So, I don't know if this is appropriate now. I can hold these off for later, but the water rates, I've got a bunch of questions on that. Is there gonna be a better time to ask those, or would now be the time about the water rate?
They will be on the next meeting.
The next city council meeting? We're gonna discuss, is that gonna be an actionable item? So next city council meeting, we're voting on whether or not to raise the rates.
You're accepting the report to send out the Prop 218 45-day notice. You are not adopting the rates at the next meeting.
Right, because you have to go through that Prop 218 period. What I would suggest, though, and if you don't mind, I'm going to take a second of your time.
Sure, yeah.
You have questions on this. If you, and I think I mentioned this at the water rate study, and hopefully everybody on YouTube knows this as well. If you do have any questions on this water rate study, this is a big thing. And I mentioned it that evening, and Tammy, I think you mentioned as well, that they could come to you, ask you any of these questions regarding this issue. You'd be able to explain, to the best of your abilities, what they are, what they're going for, what our rate is, and everything else about the water rates, any questions that you would have regarding that issue. And so like I say, we have 2 weeks.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna hold off on a couple of my questions, but one I do have, it's my understanding that at this point, we're looking at raising rates or going through the 218 process in order to get funding for our well. Is that correct? The new well we built?
Yes.
I feel like that has been done backwards, right? Where we agree to build a well, we build a well, and then we find funding for it.
We
Shouldn't it be
haven't-
the other way around?
We haven't built the well. We got funding to do the test well, and make sure that we could build a well. And now we're going back to the state to get the authorization for the funding of the new well.
I'm a little confused here. What you said was we did a test well to see if we could do it. What if we couldn't do it? And why couldn't we do it? Because the water wasn't good? The
Yes,
location wasn't
yeah,
good?
correct.
What would be the situation then after that? Then would we give up or go do another test well?
Well, we would have to explore other options.
You would move locations, and it was not technically a test well, that's what it's called, but it's just test hole. So they're drilling down to see the
Yeah,
stability of the
true.
hole, the soil, so they make sure when we do put a new well, that it's in a capable area, which it came back acceptable, and that's why we're proceeding in the area where we're at.
Where is that location gonna be?
At the existing, well one, off the end of Roosevelt, next to P and L Concrete.
We have a well there already,
We do,
so why do we need another one?
because it needs to be upgraded.
Well, that well was shut down by the state because of high nitrates.
So we're gonna go deeper this time.
Yeah,
How deep is the last well?
I'd have to get that information from them.
How deep's the new one?
Can you just keep going deeper and deeper and deeper? And
Essentially, you can, I mean, until you get to a certain point.
you go all the way through the aquifer.
I mean,
I mean, the test well or the test hole found good water, and I want to say, I'm not going to venture a guess on the depth. 600 keeps sticking in my
Yeah, I
mind,
don't
but that
wanna
could have been
guess
somebody
either.
else's well too. I mean, I don't know.
All right, so,
Yeah.
so the funding from the state, that's just basically the cheapest financing we could get to do this, right?
Correct.
Okay, all right. All right, that's all I had on that. As far as what Kurt said about the sales tax measure, and I've thought a lot about this, seems to be a number of taxes and things coming our way this year. I know that the county is looking at a sales tax increase. Escalon Unified School District is most likely going to do a bond. We are considering a sales tax measure. I mean, it is just really, really getting wild out there. And I understand that we have to pay for some of these things. One of the most basic functions of government in my mind is public safety, and that's why I can get behind specific funding mechanisms for the police department because I feel it's so vital. And so I've got my thoughts on that. But here's one thought that I wanted to throw out there. It seems like our reserve fund is doing well. It's over what we have required of it, of the 33%. Now we're around 42%. So in my mind, that means the city is bringing in enough money to put away a rainy day fund. Am I correct in that assumption?
It means we have been, yes.
We have been, okay. So here's an idea that I'd like us to consider. There's a number of fees and different things in this community that I would like to see decreased. And I have a few of them here to mention. The conditional use permit was decreased. It was cut in half, which I think is incredible. I think that we could do more. The business license fee is if you do over 100,000, I think in revenue or something like that. Do you know what it is? Do you know what the fee is?
I don't know what
I
the
guess
top part of it is.
24,000, is it? Or no, that's the first level.
Yeah.
No, there's different levels, but here's the point is I would like to see a flat business license fee. I think that would be something to consider, like a $25 business license, because this is what I think when you come in and you fill out the business, I do it every year, you fill out your business license paperwork, I'm fairly certain that is simply filed and a little bit of work is done. And I would like to see that decreased. So basically what I'm getting at is I would like to see certain fees decreased. Kurt brought it up about if you pay with your credit card, it's $4.50. Who sets that?
We set that fee. It actually absorbs the fees that we have to pay in order to process that.
Okay, well, I get that. A lot of times, I don't know which processor we're using, but when you pay with things, sometimes it's a percentage or it's a flat fee. Another one, I think online it says if you pay over the phone, there's a fee as well. And I just want us to look at that. If we're gonna increase taxes, we're gonna increase water rates, we're gonna essentially take more for certain things, I would like to see a net sort of balancing out there. That's just my opinion.
Staff did have a webinar this week or last week with another credit card provider that we're still researching.
Okay, fantastic. And then my last question on that is, I talked to Diana today about the conditional use permit. We did a fee study and it went from $1,700 down to $800 or something like that. Am I correct in that?
Yeah.
How is that accomplished? Is that an act of council to decrease fees?
Yes.
Okay. And Diana said another interesting thing. She said that it's actually we're losing money on that because that is the cost to reimburse people doing work to check the fees. Do you guys understand what I'm talking about?
No, it's the cost of the work to do.
So
to-
that's my
To process
question.
the conditional use permit.
That's my question. I don't understand that. I don't understand how it costs more to, if you're just doing your job, unless you're an hourly person and now you're working overtime, can somebody explain to me how processing a conditional use permit is costing us more?
So it's the entire process behind it. So when you apply for the use permit, staff takes in the application, reviews the application. We mail it out to all agencies that would be affected. So we send out a 30-day notice, copying the plans and the submittal, putting all those packages together. We recently switched over to email now instead of mailing them all out. We used to be making all the copies, and we send them to PG&E.
So we're saving money now.
It's more efficient than it was before, hence the price being lowered. Also as an incentive to businesses, because we wanted to, around that same time, we had made that change to the municipal code, wanting businesses to be able to do things that were originally not allowed at all, but to have that option for the permit, and then to work with that, we discussed lowering that so that it's more capable, because we were having people at the time, $17.50 is a lot. And the way
It's
that,
a
the way they
ton of
look
money.
at it is for no guarantee, because a use permit goes before the planning commission. And so there is a chance, we can't guarantee that it's an automatic approval. If there's parts about it or things about it that are concerning or don't meet code.
Right.
or-
I think what I'm getting at is, I don't understand how any of that is above
So-
and beyond what's,
I think
So-
what you need to understand is so staff is only supported, traditionally, you look at, your general taxes are to cover for your administration. When you get into development, when it's developing, the developers should be paying for the staff time. So we charge those dollars to be able to support our development services department.
so you charge, okay, so
So it's supplementing the property tax, the sales tax that feed into the general fund to be able to have that staff here. Because if we didn't charge those dollars, then we would have to cut back on staff.
And I think you hit on it right there. I am okay with property taxes. I understand if you live in a community and you pay a percentage to pay for the services provided to you to live in that community. I'm okay with, since the city provides us our water, that is an expense that we pay for, and there's annual escalations and things you have to pay people. I get that. Sales tax, I'm actually not so hot on that. Now, on top of that, we have a bunch of different fees. And the reason I'm kind of, amped up about this a little bit is that it continues on and on and on. So let me ask you this. You said that the fees from developers or business goes to supplementing the sales tax and property tax to pay for staff, right?
Correct.
I think that the sales tax and property tax should support this local
So then
government.
that means you would have to cut your staffing.
You know what? I'm not gonna stand up here and make any things where we can cut this or that. I'm just simply not in favor of adding on fees after fees after fees to pay for this, that, and the other. I think we bring in X amount of dollars, and we should live within our means, just like every other person in America. That's what I think. And so I want to get that across. That's how I feel about that. And I would like to see these fees decreased. I would like to see, if you want to open a business in the town, it's $25. There you go. File the paperwork. It's not $125 based on annual sales. It doesn't matter. Hogan Manufacturing would pay the same as the brand new little cafe that opened up. I'm okay with that. So I don't know if, I'd like to hear from everybody else about that. I don't know if anybody else, what your opinion is, but I'm not going to drag on too long. I know we got to get going. The next thing is, what do I got? Okay. Oh, the skate park thing. are we gonna have a meeting, right, with the Escalon Parks Foundation? Is that still in the works?
I haven't
Heard anything
heard any, I haven't gotten any feedback
from them?
from them.
So they're not, are they just kind of gone, sort of?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Well, it just hasn't,
Hasn't happened yet? All right.
everybody's busy.
Another thing, I got more. Van Groningen, the watermelon farmer, said he's not interested in the 19 acres. It's too small, it's the spray and everything. So I know that this is gonna come up, what to do with that property. And I know it's been kicked around what to do with that. I still think that it would be a great place for us to relook at that development as a potential retirement community, a place to serve seniors in this community more. It's right in between a golf course and a park. It's got good access. I don't know, it's the thing, there's so little development here and nobody seems to really know how to go about it. I think though that cities have the ability to attract certain types of industries. Manteca went through a huge process to attract the Great Wolf Lodge, which is gonna bring them 250, so much money. I think that we need to serve these seniors better. Everybody agrees with that, and that would be a great place, and I'd like to see something done on that. Last but not least, and actually that is all I got, so thank you.
All right, Councilmember Crumack, thank you very much. Councilmember Legero.
Thank you, Mayor Swift. Just a couple things I want to make sure they stay on the radar. We had talked a while back about the homeowner's responsibility for their sewer lines out to the middle of the street. We just want to make sure that we are not requiring that, so that they would be responsible for the portion of the line on their property, but not for repairs that require them to dig up the street and fix the line out there. So just want to make sure we're moving forward on that, or that stays on the radar. The other issue, I think the current trend is for infill projects, and we really want to develop the lots within the city limits currently. The problem is that there are a number of lots that have not been developed or will not be developed because the owner is not going to develop them. They've just been open lots for years, if not decades. A lot of those open spots, think of the old auction yard, you got 3 acres out there that's not selling, it's not being developed. We are in a pretty hot economy right now, but that's going to change. And once again, we're going to miss an opportunity to develop. How many homes are we building this year? 24, maybe? That might be a lot. So, if we build 24 homes, look at the fees that we talked about tonight, what it costs, the developer impact fees that we generate off of those, and then the ongoing property taxes that are generated by building these homes. So we're not talking about blowing the lid off, we're talking about just trying to reach our 75 home growth ordinance. The problem is we just don't have people that are coming in to develop them. So when you do have a developer that may be outside of the city limits that wants to annex in and build a project that will benefit the community, benefit the city, and pay for a lot of these things that we're looking to pay for, we're shooting ourselves in the foot by not being able to do anything with those developers. So I think it's important to continue to look at what other communities do with their hookups, with their services for these infill lots. And I know that there are some that have a pay to play. I mean, you pay to commit to those EDUs, and you lock them in by benefiting the city by paying for them. If you're not going to use them and you're not going to develop the property, then the city would have the ability to go out and look at other projects that would be beneficial for the community. So I want to look into those options to see what there are, to see if that's something that we might want to consider, given that what EDUs we do have are basically tied up on projects that are not even on the books. So I'd like to keep looking at that and see what our options are to maybe get some of these projects going. Because we're going to have another recession, and there's going to be builders that are just closing up shop, and no one's going to build another home in here again for another few years, and we're going to miss an opportunity when, if we were able to do something like this now, when we could get a development going here to build to our growth ordinance, that would be money we would generate now and money that we would generate in the future with property taxes. So I just think we're killing ourselves by not being able to do something like that. So that's it. Thanks.
All right, Councilmember Legero, thank you, and Councilmember Merkin.
We've heard a couple of comments tonight about speeding, and speeding is a community-wide issue. We've talked about McHenry, we've talked about Escalon Avenue coming into town from east and west. I see it on Santa Fe going out and coming in, out near Vine, and I see it on Vine, people coming in from Harold Avenue and going out towards Harold Avenue, far over the speed limit. And to me, the only answer is some increased enforcement. I know that the police department was out at Escalon Avenue the other day with some increased enforcement out near the Covenant Church. That's something that probably needs to be done on all these hot spots that we keep hearing about. What's the status of the fencing at the old PD Delia property? See, the fencing is still out in the street, but the sidewalks are in.
Sidewalks are in, they have an inspection tomorrow on the curb,
Okay,
and so our engineer's going to go out, and we've advised him to notify him that he needs to move his
Okay.
his fencing back in after that inspection.
okay. And the last item is the employee appreciation dinner. You guys did a great job again. It was nice to see and mingle with some of the employees that I don't get to see very often. Had a great time.
Hey, Councilmember Councilmember Merkin, thank you very much. Mayor Pro Tem Alves, do you have anything tonight?
You know I do.
Okay.
To begin with, thanks for everyone coming tonight. You know what, it's just appreciated that there's enough people that do show up and give us your opinion, because I'll tell you, not a lot of them will. And for those who show up, thank you. As far as the thing Jeff is referring to, the park, the building out and the lots we have in town, we have 35, maybe 40 acres in town that's undeveloped. And I don't know how to incentivize those individuals to develop those lots. That's a good question I don't have an answer for. But I do, and we talked to you a couple meetings back about this, and I don't think we ever got an answer, but the question was at the time, is there a way that we could take and notify these individuals that those permits, those EDUs that are existing today will be gone if they're not utilized in a certain amount of time, because we're gonna take them and give them to someone else? Is that legal to do? Is the question we asked you.
I don't know. So is there, if there's a consensus, I don't know that there was a consensus for me to research that.
Okay, how about a consensus, guys? Because here's the deal. If we can find out whether or not we can take these or not, then we could go and we could put an ad in the paper to all the property owners, or notify them, look, we're gonna hold a hearing. And at the hearing, we're gonna explain to them, here's our situation. We have all this land in town and nobody wants to do anything with it. That's fine, but we need some development. So here's what the deal we're gonna make you. We're gonna offer you a chance to develop your property, or we're gonna remove those EDUs from your use and give them to the developer who wants to come in and bring a piece of land and do something. That's what I think we should consider.
Yeah, I mean, I see a lot of obstacles in,
Well, find out whether or
because
not
then
we can.
you would be talking about lifting the sewer moratorium,
No, we're not
lifting the
lifting.
moratorium.
We have a number of 250, what I'm referring to. That's what we currently have.
No, I
now.
know, but if nobody wanted to,
Use
pay,
it.
yeah, then you would have to lift the moratorium,
Why would we have to lift the moratorium?
because you have
You'd
a
have
more,
to
on
annex.
annexation, because you'd have to annex.
No, we still have the 250. Why do we have to lift the moratorium for that? You have.
No, you
250.
don't. But what if the owners of the 250 say, we don't want them, we just want to sit on our property and not develop it,
Then we'll take those and give them to somebody who wants to do it.
which would require annexation.
That's right, but that doesn't mean you have to add more, change the moratorium, because you have 250 to deal with.
There really is no good way to deny them their EDUs, as long as we do not
Oh,
annex,
okay, it's-
right? There's no
Wait a
way
minute, I
to
get it.
deny
The
them.
moratorium is on the annexation.
It's on annexation.
Yeah,
And you'd
yeah.
have to get
I got it.
LAFCO, you'd have to lift the moratorium, then you'd have to get you'd have to get LAFCO to approve it, which is, really questionable. I mean, you might be able to, but if you have undeveloped land within the city, LAFCO may not approve it.
Okay, that's another
Yeah.
problem.
So
Okay, how-
that's probably why I didn't go
Okay,
down that
good.
path. I mean,
How about this? What if we had a meeting and set out notices to all the property owners and invited them to a meeting and asked them why they're not developing their land?
absolutely,
And why
Yeah.
what can we do to help them?
absolutely.
So why don't we consider that, council?
Yes.
See what see how many of them will respond. I mean, it's
Okay,
worth a
so-
shot.
so
It's
here-
worth a
What
shot.
if you did
Yeah.
it differently? What if you said, if you do something with your property for the next 3 years, you get a break on something?
Well, let's not do anything until we talk to them first. Let's talk to them.
But that's a possibility.
Yeah, let's look
you
at,
know.
let's look at the feeling of these individuals and get some feedback, and then we'll go from there.
And find out what their plans are,
Exactly.
if any.
So why don't we do that?
Okay.
Can we set that into motion?
There's no reason you can't do that.
Can we wait till after the first of the year?
We can
Because
make it
our-
all help you,
because-
I don't care when, it's just.
Because we have a lot of,
A lot of stuff
lot
now.
of, we have full agendas the next few meetings.
Well, here's
and,
the deal, guys.
Other
But
meetings
let me
too.
explain something to you. I understand that completely. But we're in a situation now, we're going through, we've raised water rates, storm drain rates, sewer rates, water rates, and now
And
we're
a
asking for a
storm.
sales tax, and there's a bond on there. What I'm trying to tell you is this, we need to move as quickly as possible to try to get some people to do something than taxing us to death. That's my thinking, okay? And again, I know you're busy, but my question is, what you're busy with, is that more important than getting relief from our being taxed to death? That's my question. Okay, so keep that in mind while you're thinking about it, and
Just do
we'll
a
move forward.
subcommittee, they can do it themselves.
Well, somebody has to send out the notices.
True.
So if
Go
you,
ahead.
so anyway, we gotta do something, okay? So my idea is, whenever we can, the sooner we can, the better. All right, we'll leave it at that, and you can tell us when you can squeeze it in. All right, the other thing is, tonight we talked about, control manager. Do not take that personal. It's not against you personally, it's just the way I feel about situations and the relationship to this body and the staff. And it's not a personal thing, it's just I believe differently, and I express my opinion, I hope you understand that. So if you took it personal, I apologize. All right, next thing. Oh, tonight I talked to Justin, he says to me that we're gonna be fixing the bump out in front of the shopping center, which everybody tells me every time I see him, when's the bump gonna be fixed? It's gonna be fixed soon because Justin has a partner project that he's gonna be able to somehow work with this project and get them both done at the same time. Thank you. The other thing is the fence is going up in the baseball diamonds. We have nice new fences being put in. We won't look like a third world country anymore. Street sweeper, another thing, people are going, why can't we blow our lawn and our leaves back on the street anymore? Why we can't? I said, because Jilton doesn't pick it up. Is that the correct answer?
It violates stormwater laws.
Okay, stop. How in the hell did we do this for 20, 30, 40, 50 years and all of a sudden it's against the law?
Talk to the state.
New law.
It's
Talk to
all
the state.
new, the 5-year MS4 stormwater, only rain down the drain, and so we have
You
to,
know
we're
what? They can
required to
stick
put that
it.
stuff into our, as well as I don't believe Jilton provides that service anymore either. Yeah, I mean, it's a mixture of both. They're also
We
state
have a
mandated
street-
by the
we
same
have a street
laws.
cleaner. Let's
Yes.
use it. We pay for that service. We've always had that service. It should be reinstated and people should have their streets cleaned with that, if they blow their stuff out there. This is crazy. Pay more and get less is wrong. Okay, well, it's something we should talk about, cause I get hit with it a lot. Street sweeper, park fence, we did that. Road bumps, trash, city trash, metals, trash. Okay, I told them that. Commercial development. Commercial development. Escalon is an ag environment, and I know that we have ordinances that prevent certain types of displays and businesses and so forth and so on. But you gotta put in perspective here, and I'll give you an example. Driving through Manteca, if you drive towards the freeway, on the left-hand side, there's a trailer place, and next to that trailer place is a yard place that has rock and pipe and so forth and so on. And it's out there displayed. We have a business in town that sells pipe, and we're being told, or they're being told, they can't display it, it's unsightly. I don't get it. To me, we're an ag community. That's part of his advertisement. He sells pipe. Why would you stash it? So, I mean, I got an issue with that. I think we're trying to help businesses, not hinder them. So I would like us to think a little more about when we tell businesses what's presentable in terms of what they're, in their yards, we should consider that. That pipe, when people drive by, they look at the pipe, they go, hey, there's the pipe. This is the ag environment. We're not living in New York City. So let's think about that before we cramp down on those guys and make their lives harder. About saving incentives for payment stuff. Is it possible that if you knew what your water bill was in the last 5 years, as a deal, you could pay like 6 months of it up in advance with a reduction, or a year in advance with a reduction? Would that make any sense? If they were to write you a check ahead of time,
No.
and why not? You're not
Why?
gonna have to bill them every month or every 2 months.
We
That's
still
out.
have to.
Why would you have to still bill them if you made an agreement where they would pay you this much money up front? Boom.
What if they
Well,
go,
because they're still gonna wanna know what we're charging them.
Well, it's gonna be water. I mean, it's water.
what if they go over or under? Are they gonna want a rebate?
Well, no, you would review that, but I'm saying up front, you give them the big hunk of money, get that cash flow in.
Yeah, but I don't think we have a cash flow issue though.
We always have a cash flow issue, trust me.
Well, I know, I don't think it's that,
Okay, just an idea.
yeah, that's not a bad
All
idea.
right, I agree with Kurt's opinion on the ballot. I totally agree with you, Kurt, on that one. I think it's exactly the way I feel about it. If it's not gonna be locked in personally for the police department, I can't support it. I won't support it. Employees dinner, I'm sorry, I didn't make it, I was sick, but I wish I could have been. It's always been a great event, and I think it does a nice, it's good interaction between staff and council. So I think that's it. Thank you.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Alves, thank you very much. I just have a couple things real quick, because I know it's been getting on a little bit. Veterans Day Parade is gonna be what time? 10:30. 10:30 is when the parade starts. So line us about like 9:30. So council members, that's your time, 9:30, 9:45.
Sold.
Okay, look for the tiny little Model A. And the other issue regarding speeding that I've heard a little bit about was regarding Stanislaus Street, and specifically the stretch between just past the high school to Miller. There's just enough time for everybody to start, stepping on the gas in that area. And I don't know if we had ever discussed any issues regarding speed bumps or anything like that. Really, we've been going back and forth with some of these speed issues in a number of parts of town. And I would imagine in some of the interior parts of town, like schools and stuff like that, is that really that bad an idea to put some kind of a serious slowdown there, like a speed bump?
We just ordered a speed hump for the issue on Yosemite that's been in talks in the process last year.
Okay.
That should come in the next few weeks to a month. We'll get that installed, and I think that'd be a good pilot for us to try
Yeah.
before we start going crazy.
No, that's good. No, that'd be a great pilot. That'd be a great pilot. And to segue from that, the sewer study, or that's gonna be on next Wednesday, that will be on YouTube as well?
Yes,
I believe the water rate study was on YouTube
correct.
as well, okay. And, with all these studies, and the reason we want to get as much exposure as possible, as much transparency as possible on these, is to get as much opinion as possible on these. For example, we had some great input from Kirk tonight about the tax increase. Now, it can be confusing. I personally have trepidation about the 50%. I think if we're gonna go forward with this community, I think we have to go for the whole thing, 67%. But we're really gonna see what kind of an input we get from the citizens on this issue, as well as a number of issues. And I've heard a lot of talk about growth tonight, and, sometimes I ask the question, why? Why do you want to grow? Why do you want to grow this? And some of it's been couched in, well, because it can save a little bit, from, raising this tax here or raising that fee there. A lot of these fees, and believe me, nobody wants to see fees increases. I don't want to see fees increases. I don't want to see taxes increased. But I also know there's a thing out there called inflation. Everything goes up. You go to the convenience store, I had a sandwich today, a $9 sandwich. I'm thinking, this is not a $9 sandwich, it's a $6 sandwich. Yeah, because what are you paying the employees now? Everything is going up incrementally. And part of what the reality of the situation is as managing the city, which is what you do, and then we're also managing the community, is to be able to recognize that we need to keep up with that stuff, because the last thing we want to do is to not have the monies to redo, put in a new well, progress with the times, continue to rebuild our infrastructure. So whereas these fees, nobody really wants to be paying more than fees, but I think it is a conscious decision, and it's if you look at it realistically, that's the option. So the flip side of that is you grow. The flip side of that is, do you grow? And will that solve your problem without raising any fees? And I think that's can be a very intriguing argument, but I think it's a false argument. Not all growth is bad, but you really have to ask yourself, why? Why do you want to grow? Why do you want more houses? Why do you want, now obviously, nobody has any problem with more commercial places as long as they're the kind that you're right. That you can collect sales tax off of, and like Councilmember Legero rightly suggested also, there are additional property taxes that you collect per each new house you put in town. There are also, one time, right. Well, the property tax is continual in the county and all these other entities, so you gotta go part of that property tax, say thank you very much. Okay, so I think that in any kind of an equation like this, we really have to ask ourselves, what do we want more? Everybody wants to keep up with the times. Everybody wants to make sure we have a good infrastructure and a good police force. Do we want to get that through paying a little more to keep up with our fees, or do we want to get that through growing a little more? And will that growth actually accomplish what we think it's going to accomplish? You're right, temporary relief. Yeah, temporary relief. So that's just a cautionary, and we're gonna find out what the public wants over the next few weeks on a lot of these issues. But I do caution the concept of growth as the magic elixir. Ask every city around here, has it gotten them exactly what they wanted, and is everybody happy with those, in those communities with those results? I know that, I know that this community has spoken time and again over the last year about what kind of a town they like, and that's okay. But there are trade-offs then. And that might mean, yes, unfortunately, you might have to pay a little more in sales tax or in fees, which, by the way, it's still going to keep us as one of the most competitive towns around in terms of those fees. So, you wanted something to add on?
I have a guy who's talking to investors to do a senior project.
Mhm.
Once he gets to the point where they're willing to move forward, I'd like to have a meeting with staff and two of the council, maybe one of the council members, and see if we can come to an agreement on the property they pick, to make some adjustments, that we can give them enough incentive to do it. So, when it does come, who wants to be on that? You wanna be on that?
That'd be great.
Okay,
That'd be great.
good.
Yeah.
Oh, he's
And there are
trying.
cards that we can play in that case.
Well,
Yeah.
the problem he's having, every time they get this close, one guy finds a better project and leaves the circle. So then they gotta go recruit another guy, cause they had it real close once before.
Yeah.
But he says he's closer again, so we'll see.
Okay, okay.
All right?
Here we go. And on that note, I'd like to thank everybody for coming tonight, and hope to see everybody out on Monday supporting our veterans, the parade, the chicken dinner, which, by the way, starts at noon. Okay, service is 11:30? Okay, we'll see you all there. Thank you for coming tonight. How much? That's cheap. Okay. A half a chicken, fantastic. Or ribs? Excellent. Thank you everybody for coming tonight.